We also have Mr. Khurana from Adani Ports, Mr. K. Rajendra Kumar from Visakhapatnam Port Trust, and Mr. Mrinal Sirkar from JNPT. May I please request all the panelists to switch on their videos so that we can see all of you. I'm just waiting for Mr. Chaturvedi and Mr. Sirkar.
I've switched on my video,
yes.
But somehow it's not getting reflected. I don't know.
Okay. And do we have Mr. Rajendra Kumar as well? Mr. Kumar, am I audible to you? Mr. Kumar, are you there? Prerna, if you could call Mr. Kumar and check if he's there. Yes. So, gentlemen, welcome everyone. The structure of the session, let me briefly introduce all of you, and then I will begin with brief remarks from each one of you that could be for about 6 to 7 minutes, talking about your experience. Then I'll have some specific questions for each one of you and some common questions. Let me take a moment and introduce you. For the session, we have with us, and I'm going in alphabetical order. We have with us Mr. RohitChaturvedi, who's lead new initiatives at Essar Ports. He currently looks after technology and analytics. He has experience in business and technology of more than 20 years in multinational and multicultural contexts, including senior roles in strategy and due diligence, business consulting with substantial exposure in India, Africa, and Southeast Asia. He's worked on and led more than 200 assignments in infrastructure sector with public and private sector clients and governments. He was instrumental in setting up transport and logistics verticals at CRISIL. He's also worked with consulting organizations like KPMG and AF Ferguson, now which is Deloitte. He also founded transporthub.com, a technology startup in the space of IoT and analytics. Mr. Chaturvedi has an MBA from IIM Bangalore. We welcome you, Mr. Chaturvedi.
Thanks, Adhika. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. We also have with us Mr. Khurana, who's CEO of Southern Ports at Adani Ports and SEZ Limited, with over 20 years experience in the sector. In his current role, he manages the P&L and overall business management and team development for Kattupalli Port and PPP terminals of Adani, Etanor, Goa, and Visakhapatnam. I do hear a few noises. If Prerna, if you could mute everybody else for the moment. Thank you. Mr. Khurana has extensive experience in spearheading the development of ports on PPP basis, marketing of port services, business development of SEZ and industrial estate, airport sector, commercials and operations of dry bulk and container shipping, time chartering businesses, acquisition of vessels, coastal shipping, and inland waterways. Mr. Khurana is an engineer from IIT Dhanbad and has an MBA from IMT Ghaziabad. Mr. Khurana, thank you so very much and welcome you today to this conference.
Good morning and thank you for having me here today, Atika.
We also have with us Mr. K. Rajendra Kumar, who's Joint Director, Visakhapatnam Port Trust. Mr. Kumar is an engineer and has an MTech in CST from AU College of Engineering, Visakhapatnam. He also has an MBA from B.R. Ambedkar Open University and PG Diploma in Cyber Laws from Nalsar. We welcome you, Mr. Kumar. I hope you are able to hear me. I do not see your video on, nevertheless. Finally, we also have Mr. Mrinal Sirkar, who's head of IT and CIO at JNPT, with over 4 decades of experience in ICT domain. He's worked with the Ministry of Industries for 8 years as system analyst. He's also worked with Kolkata Port Trust and assistant manager systems for 11 years. Mr. Sirkar has a BSc degree in mathematics and also has MCA and MBA degrees. We welcome you, Mr. Sirkar, please. So As I mentioned earlier, we would begin with brief remarks. Let's move alphabetically for the first round. And then, I think we all will agree we have a good mix of private and public sector major ports. So covering the entire spectrum of how digitization is moving and what is the experience. So brief remarks, we'll begin with Mr. Chaturvedi. Mr. Chaturvedi, 6 to 7, up to 8 minutes. Your experience with digitization of ports and automation. And I would request the delegates to kindly send your comments in the chat section and questions in the Q&A section, and do specify to whom the question is raised. Mr. Chaturvedi, please.
Thanks, Atika, and thanks for having me here today. I think, first of all, let me give you a brief background on Essar Port. I think most of you know about Essar Port. It is the second largest private port in India. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So it is the second largest private port in India, and we have been taking technology very seriously. So I think we are one of the oldest players in India. And of course, now people are talking about AI and machine learning and IoT, but we have been using technologies like PLC. So now I think most of you will know that, programmable logic controllers, which are used for automation. We have automated almost all our ports across all the locations, and we have seen efficiency gains because of technology. Our experience, as I say that, we have been using technology. It's been very good. Otherwise, we could not have been able to manage all the 4 ports with 110 million ton capacity, not only in India and abroad. Now we are taking it very seriously. We of course, the confluence of technology and you can say a kind of business outlook that we have is making it mandatory that we should be looking at new technologies. And it is my mandate here that I am looking at new technologies. But having said that, I think we'll be discussing maybe sometime later that what are the problems. And of course, technology is a very widespread term. It is an all-encompassing term which has been used very loosely. Every port, in fact, I was hearing Mr. Sudhir before this session, and the standardization. In fact, I have other views on standardizations. We can speak on that, and maybe I think we can discuss them when we talk about the gaps. We can talk about the challenges that we are facing. But in nutshell, let me just tell you that we are looking at technology, and I'll be giving you specific examples of what we are using. We are not only using on, say, vessel turnaround time, we are also using for efficiency improvement, green energy. If you talk about renewable energy, this port management. So there are, various aspects that I'll be speaking about. So I think in nutshell, let me say that technology is going to transform the way business has been done in port sector, and it is going to change the port sector as it's been never before. In fact, transport and logistics per se, not only ports, has not been very aggressive in terms of adoption of technology. But I think things are changing, and other panelists may speak on that. And I'm sure that this panel is going to give some kind of insights to all the audience. And of course, I'll also learn from other panelists. That's all from my side.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Chaturvedi. And then definitely we'll come to specific questions a bit later, talking about gaps in standardization. Mr. Khurana, over to you, please.
Thank you, Atika, and good morning once again to everyone. So we've got a very exciting topic for discussion today is on digitalization and automation in the port sector. So while a lot of work was going on before COVID hit us, but one of the greatest learnings that I think it's all of us have learned during COVID is that how the shipping and the port sectors have actually behaved. So initially, when COVID struck, nobody knew which way the shipping freights would go, how the indices will move. In fact, I remember the Baltic Index actually nosedived in the month of May 2020. But then afterwards, what has happened is that shipping lines got their act together. They created alliances. They started blanking out sailings, and obviously they maintained their profitabilities. In fact, if you look at the balance sheet of most of the shipping lines, say Maersk or HMM for the year 2020, they have actually shown huge profits because they were able to, regulate the supply side. I mean, in terms of capacity, they reduced the capacity on certain routes and they made money. Coming on to the port sector, which we belong to, so one of the first things which we noticed was that obviously now the container vessels, if we are talking about, the windows are no longer sacrosanct. Whatever windows were allocated to the ports, I mean to the certain shipping lines, the vessels are not coming according to that. So that led us to a huge planning crisis, that how do we plan our operations, how do we plan our crisis, and because of COVID, there were no manpower who was willing to come to the port to work also. So that was a time when we at Adani Ports, we laid a lot of impetus on investing in the technology as well as in terms of putting the processes in place so that once the COVID thing is also over, we are never caught by surprise by such a pandemic. So one of the initial things which we were planning to implement, but we implemented during IPOS, was implemented during COVID periods, was IPOS system. It's the integrated port operating system which we successfully implemented in South ports, and TCS is a technology provider for that, and that brought out huge savings. Sorry, not only in terms of cost but in terms of operations also, in terms of my trailer deployment, in terms of crane efficiency, everything was getting monitored online. Everything was relayed to all the shift supervisor managers, even people who were working from home. From the system only, the messages were being sent to the customers on their vessels berthing, vessel performance, and other documentation processes. And I'm very happy to state that we implemented it bang in the middle of COVID, or during the first peak of COVID during June 2020. All of a sudden, we also found that drivers are not coming. So although we have a fleet of vehicles, but then there are no drivers. So then we already had part of the fleet was having GPS as well as VTMS systems were already there, but we integrated them and we found that that also brought about an efficiency. We also entered into the Trade Lanes Alliance, which has it's like a conglomeration of corporates which have come together digitally to make the experience for the shippers a lot easier. So we joined the Trade Lanes Alliance also, resulted in the reduction in the cost for connecting to shipping lines, simplifying the conversational electronic communications in terms of everybody was calling up the agent was calling up the port representative, and then backwards the same messages were getting relayed. It also enabled advanced communication, aggregated booking volumes for the next mode of transport. So now not only the customer knew that which vessel their boxes are coming, they could in advance plan their evacuation also, because as we all know, due to the labor migration and all, the trailers and the trucks were off roads for quite a bit of time. So that is again one of the challenges which we saw, was that evacuation from the ports is also an issue, because although the customers are willing to take their cargo, I mean, whose plants and all had started working after the initial hit, they were not able to evacuate the cargo. Simply, there were not that many wheels available on the road to evacuate the cargo. Similarly, we went in for weighbridge automation also, that nobody will have to stand in the queue, so that the weighbridges can weigh the containers or the cargo which is going in a dumper. Automatically, the truck or the dumper goes on to the weighbridge. The weight is taken, relayed into the IPOS. IPOS sends it across to the customer. So it's totally automated without any human intervention is there. Now, these were some of the initiatives which we actually were able to implement it quite successfully. And yes, like I said, COVID gave that extra push to us. Now, there were certain challenges, like while you are implementing any new system, you also recognize that there are certain weaknesses which are inherent in the system, or with all the capabilities where we need to develop or focus on. So one was the insufficient human resource capacity building. The whole idea was that the team has to be geared up or need to have the desired competencies to take it to the next level. So that means that your human capital also has to be trained for it. So that took us some time, because this system was world class. But yes, because there were no trainers who were available to conduct face-to-face classes, so we had to get into a virtual classroom, that we found to be a challenge. So that was one. Second was the IT infrastructure. Obviously, now we are moving towards a 5G era, but yes, the reliability of the connection and the bandwidth are still posing an issue. Uh, Lack of trackable KPIs. Again, like having a system in place is very nice, but if you don't know what KPIs you need to track with, or what are the desires or the wish list which is being posed by the customers, that's again a disconnect which is happening. And lastly, it's obviously that when you try to do anything new, there is always a resistance to a change, because people are always a little skeptical about any new system coming in, especially in the era of digitalization and automation, thinking that their job roles may become redundant. So that's it from my side, Atika. I mean, with a few words, and happy to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Khurana. We've heard from the private sectors. Let's hear the experience from major ports. Mr. Kumar, we'll hear first from you.
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
You are, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Rajendra Kumar, Joint Director, Visakhapatnam Port. We are the third largest major port in India. We have been implementing these digital initiatives since a decade. However, all these digital initiatives, what we have implemented till now, it's only related to this documentation and invoice processing percolated into IoT and AI. These are the two areas where we are lagging, and hopefully we are trying to implement these solutions in this current financial year, for which we floated one tender to integrate AI. So ultimately, what we want to create is digital happiness. Employees should be happy, customers should be happy.
Mr. Kumar, there is a disturbance at your end, and I don't think you're very clear. In fact, we missed what you said in the last 1 minute.
Oh, madam, am I audible?
Yes, you are. In the beginning, you were absolutely fine. I think last 45 seconds is somewhere where the audio got distorted. So if you could just...
Yeah. Madam, our aim is to digital happiness in three fronts. First, to our employees, to our trading partners, and to our contractors. We are creating a system in which all the three people will be happy, so that the digital happiness comes when anyone who want to transact digitally, he should be able to transact with the minimum effort. For which we have already floated a tender for port operations system, which will be taken up in this financial year, for which that is on. Maybe interested bidders can see and participate in that tender. That is one initiative. The thing is implementation of
Hello, Mr. Kumar. Are you there? Mr. Kumar, I think you're muted by mistake. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, you were talking about the tenders and your initiative that you've already launched those tenders.
Once this POS tender is finalized, which may happen in the next 2 months, we will be concentrating on AI and IoT. My request or analyst can share one view on this IoT implementation. See, everyone in the shipping industry, everyone who is working with the ports, they will be knowing how the cargo volume is measured. It is through the load line. When the vessel comes, the surveyors will be there. They will be putting a load line, and when the operations is complete, whether discharge or loading, again load line is computed, and with Simpson's one-third rule, we calculate the volume, and with multiplied by specific gravity, we will be getting the volume of cargo loaded or unloaded. This is very crude method of doing things, where automation of IoT can help. What I am thinking, this survey business, it is taking time because it takes at least 2-3 hours time each time. That at least there will be 6 to 7 hours time will be lost in survey. If this can be automated, lot of transparency also will come among the different regulatory agencies and ports, for which what I am thinking, this area I will be concentrating by installing GPS kind of automation in the cranes. Now all harbor mobile cranes which are coming, they are equipped with automation. So which if we can capture at the time of loading or unloading, we may try to automate it and avoid this type of rudimentary practices of computing the volume through survey. Okay, surveyors may be required for quality, not for quantity. The panelists, what are their views? They can share what can be done. See, this practice is going on all Indian major ports. I don't know about private ports. So this will greatly help in transparently working, and no loss of cargo to cargo owners or receivers.
Sure, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, that's all, madam.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Kumar. We'll now hear from JNPT. Mr. Sirkar, please.
Yeah, thank you, Adhika, for having me over here, and good morning, everyone. From JNPT's perspective, you must be aware that JNPT is #1 container major port in India, handling the maximum amount of container traffic. So it becomes more challenging for us to automate process. The level of manpower, like the other legacy ports that were there during the British time, the manpower is not that up to the in terms of quantity. So we need to automate many of these processes as such. As part of the digital transformation, obviously, to start with, we had gone for the terminal operating system, which is of Navis. And later on, about a year back, we upgraded it to the latest platform on Java, which is Spark N4. And that has got a lot of additional functionality with relevant interfaces with the stakeholders also. In addition to that, as part, we were facing a lot of gate congestion, and this was resulting in a lot of inefficiency in the port operations. So in order to address that particular concern, we have introduced what we call it as RFID gate automation. So that has streamlined the entire process, and the gate operation is very seamless right at this particular stage. And a lot of manual intervention which we're having at the gates, that has been removed completely. Now only the gates are having the security CISF officials, and all have been put onto a place what we call it as centralized parking plaza. So I'll just briefly explain you the concept behind the centralized parking plaza is basically we are having 4 terminals, including our own terminals. So all offices of these terminals will be located at the centralized parking plaza with a significant amount of parking area provided there. All the documentation activity will be carried out there, and then they'll be issued a RFID tag, and then they go to the respective terminal gates to get into their respective terminals. So where the terminal operating system of the respective terminal takes over and assign them the relevant slots, and then the entire automation within the ports takes place. So that centralized parking plaza has already started functioning, and it's in the process of fine-tuning the entire processes. That definitely is giving a lot of benefits to the port. The other area that we have gone for is that during the pandemic we have been authorized by the Ministry of Home Affairs to issue essential service passes because during the pandemic there were a lot of restriction of people moving outside. So earlier we started off with the manual processes of producing the Aadhaar card manually, and we had set up a control room out here where people posted. That was creating a lot of issues, and frankly speaking, that lot of in terms of people getting infected, there were a lot of risk involved in it. So in order to streamline the entire process, what we did is that we developed a web-based application where people can apply online with the relevant documents uploading into that. And then based on those validation that has been carried out, people sitting in the control room issues those passes and they get online there. No need not to come to the control room. So that was one of the initiatives that we have taken during pandemic. Plus what Mr. Sudhir has said, that e-office, one of the areas, although we had started e-office, but in a limited way. But with this pandemic, the entire file movement process has been automated, and all files for approvals are going through the e-office system, and that has been very effectively used, and people are quite happy with that particular thing. These are the few things that we took up during the pandemic. Of course, there are a lot of other issues because during the pandemic, there were a lot of cases of cyber attack happening. So in order to address those concerns, we also thought of upgrading the entire cybersecurity framework that we have to safeguard our entire infrastructure. So we are in process of introducing a lot of other appliances within our internet gateways. WAF is one of them being considered. We already have a firewall at the gateway level, plus and NAC also is also there in our thing. A lot of other internal endpoint security we have already developed. We are in process of taking a holistic approach of upgrading the entire cybersecurity framework, which is presently on. Hopefully within 2 or 3 months' time, that will be in place. So just as an opening remark, these are the few quick initiatives that I would like to address. You can take it further when we talk about.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sirkar. You were talking about, during COVID, a lot of things going paperless. So is it a completely paperless regime at JNPT, and there is no physical document exchange?
Paperless, not exactly 100%, I would say, to be very honest with you, but the entire file movement is paperless. Right from the start to the end of chairman's approval, it's digitally signed and approved. So the file movement, a few circulars and other things that we are also trying to put it, because that particular e-office has this functionality of putting all those documentation as part of this particular platform. So slowly we are trying to inform the user about to use other functionalities so that to make it 100%. Now the few documents, small loadings and other things which is there. So this has been achieved primarily because of the strong stand being taken by the top management, that they'll not be entertaining any files or approval without if it doesn't come through e-office. So that has given a big boost in implementation of this nature.
Sure. Mr. Kumar, at your port, is the scenario the same? Is it only the e-documents at the approval, or is it a completely paperless regime?
What Mr. Sirkar told, it's the same system we are also following. Mostly it is completely paperless only.
Sure. Coming to you, Mr. Khurana, if we talk about Adani ports, can we say that it's a paperless regime being followed?
Yeah, yes, we are paperless, except for one form at the gate, which we take it in the physical copy. Rest of all are digital documents.
And that's at all Adani ports, right? Whether we are talking about Mundra, Hazira and all.
Yes.
Okay. How about Essar port, Mr. Chaturvedi?
I think we are leading towards that. We have a different kind of port profile, and most of the processes are paperless, but I wouldn't say that they are using digital technologies. So, as a private sector, we have some maybe freedom. So we are using mostly, emails for, the process like vessel nomination. So in fact, the vessels come and we are using emails for nomination. We are going to change that as well. I think next couple of months will be completely digitized from end to end. Of course, the challenge will remain for custom integration, and that's what we are looking forward to.
Sure. Let me take your view also, Mr. Chaturvedi, on standardization. We were talking about it. Um, what is, firstly, is there a need? And two, what could be done to achieve that, given that everybody's, using different processes, and how do we make sure that we could have some kind of standardization in this area?
Correct. So I think recent technological development, I'll not use the technological words and jargons here. So of course, but I'll use, a term called API. So now when we are using APIs are essentially, kind of integrators or pipe with which you can integrate various systems. Rather than having a standardized system, which is a big goal, each port has a different dynamic. Uh, you know, Essar port is mostly focused on, say, bulk commodities. Adanis have a mix of commodity. Our term is different from various authorities. Now, every system, every workflow, every process is going to be different for each port. And if we wait for standardization, one, it is going to be waterfall approach, which I really don't see any reason for, because nowadays every software is being developed even by the biggest of the companies with agile methodologies. So you should be using small step towards the ideal outcome. And then there are technologies which can ensure intercompatibility. So you can always have your system compatible with, say, third-party system, or if you have, say, VTMS, if you have government system, even if I want to, say, cooperate with Adani ports, then I will have APIs exposed to them and they can integrate with our system. So I rather feel that, every port should take its own course, and technologies are available which are cheap, which are very easy to implement. And standardization, in fact, the basis of internet is that, different kind of technologies can talk to each other, and that's what we are doing. IoT is essentially that. As I said in my opening remark, we are using PLCs. Now PLCs, why they have not become mainstream? Because they have their own protocol. Now once you are making internet of things, then you are integrating those PLCs with internet, and that is where we are making it exposed to everyone else in the open world. So that is what I am saying. So standardization is, I think, I don't know why people are talking about standardization, but technologies are available with which you can standardize if you wish.
Mr. Chaturvedi, sorry, I was on mute. Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Chaturvedi, my question was, what about Essar, port? Are you on PCS? You're not there. You don't need to be there. You're planning to be there. What is the current stance?
So in fact, we are evaluating, and
Okay.
we are not there yet. If there are merits, and I think the way forward is, if you talk about the gaps, way forward is to go for ecosystem approach. So it is not going to be port as standalone. As I call it, port should be as a platform. So in software lingo, port as a platform. So port should be platform, and we should take the port to the customer. And that is what the objective. And with that objective, we are implementing all the technologies.
Sure.
So in
Mr.
fact, we
Khurana,
are not really, we are not so wedded to AI and ML. I'll speak about that once I think we'll speak about the new developments.
We'll do that. Mr. Khurana, talking about Adani ports, your current stance on PCS or PCX1?
We are also currently in the process of evaluating and see that how it can get integrated with our internal systems. And that's again a challenge, because how to make the two systems talking to each other and keeping in view the cybersecurity in view is what we are evaluating.
So do you feel there is a need, or is it more because the major ports are there and it's a government initiative?
I think it's a good to have thing, but the only thing is that, for the private ports, since we are all working on different technology platforms, integration is something which is going to take time, and obviously the comfort has to be given not only to the ports but also to the customers that the data is going to be safe, especially during the integration and when the exchange of the data happens. So that's where
Sure.
we are.
Sure. With respect to standardization, Mr. Khurana, which areas is it needed, and what are the challenges that are there?
Okay, so I think in our case, what we've done is, since we've got a portfolio of 12 ports now in India, so what we've done is that how we follow the standardization process is internally is that we benchmark the processes within, say, we've got 4 container terminals. So we benchmark the performances, we benchmark the manpower requirements, we benchmark the cost, and we are in the, I mean, in a way, we have already standardize those processes. So whether it's for container handling, whether it's for coal handling. So having said that, obviously 100% standardization is not possible because each site has its own nuances. It has its own, how do I say, typical features, both in terms of physical plots, in terms of railways, etc. But to the extent whatever standardization is possible, we are doing it internally.
And your 12 ports are, I'm sure, integrated and talking to each other in the specified manner.
Yes, we have.
Sure. Coming to Mr. Sirkar, what has been your experience with PCS?
With respect to PCS, the journey started with PCS, the first initial version of it. So there were a lot of challenges in terms of the delay in getting those messages. Sometimes the messages were not coming in time because for the messages to come in time, it has an impact over the entire port operations also. I'll just tell you one example. There is a message called SMTP that relates to the entire release of containers going by rail. So if the SMTP message doesn't reach in time, so entire operations of the rake is withheld. So these were the initial challenges which were there in earlier version of PCS. If PCS 1X which has come in, there have been definitely some amount of improvement is definitely there. But still, I would say that there are a lot of other stakeholders because what I understand is that PCS 1X still do not encompasses many other stakeholders which are supposed to play a significant role in this entire framework, PCS 1X framework. So hopefully what Mr. Sudhir has said that that initiative has been taken as part of your national logistic portal that is coming up. But I honestly feel that the participation from various stakeholders is a must. Otherwise, this is going to the actual benefit and the overall benefit that the economy will get as part of ease of doing business will never be able to achieve. I'll tell you, frankly speaking, the present PCS also, I happen to study the Antwerp port community system as well. There were, when you compare your existing PCS with the Antwerp port community system, is that there are a lot of flexibilities in terms of they are not restricted to a particular message format, so to say, proprietary in nature. So that's the reason I was wanting that PCS should focus more on a international message structure like UNADFAC. We need to adopt all those messages because JNPT, so to say, when we started off, we started even before the PCS, we started with some of the UNADFAC messages and we have been exchanging with the shipping lines on, and back end they have integrated with the data. The new PCS coming in, these are proprietary messages and those shipping lines are not willing to change their format because when they have got a seamless integration with the backend application and again changing that entire process becomes a big challenge for them. So I've been requesting IPA also to adopt and move towards the UNADFAC messages so that the adoption rate becomes quite high and the real benefit of what we call of ease of doing business is achieved.
We did hear from in the morning from Mr. Sudhir that they are adapting UNADFAC. Sure. Mr. Kumar, with respect to your port, what has been the experience with PCX1? Are you completely on that? Are there any challenges on that front? Mr. Kumar, if you could unmute yourself. Mr. Kumar, are you there? Prema, if you could quickly check with him, and then I'll come to. Yeah, I think I can hear him. Mr. Kumar?
Yes, madam.
Yes, I was asking.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. I was asking about your experience with PCX1X. And are you completely there on the system? What are the
Madam, as
challenges?
Mrs. said rightly,
Please go ahead, Mr. Kumar.
in the PCS to be voted. That is presently not happening.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Kumar. Please go ahead.
Yeah, onboarding of all the agents involved in the shipping trade to be onboarded. That is the primary challenge. That is what some effort to be made by the government, which will definitely reap the benefit of PCS1X. So what Sirkar, all agencies to be onboarded. That is presently not there. Once this logistic portal comes, maybe the scenario may change. Because I'll tell you, now immigration was not there onboarded. They are doing as usual in the manual way. So because of that, the trade is facing some challenges. So once everyone is onboarded on PCS1X through National Logistic Portal, all these inconsistencies and data gaps will be eliminated.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Khurana, my next question is for you.
Yes, please.
Largest private sector, ports, 12 ports in the kitty. What is the kind of budgets for IT that you have year on year? So,
okay, so that's a challenge which we face every year during the budgeting exercise, because there is a trade-off, because everything comes at a price. So while I'll tell you the process. What we follow is that we just don't go with a number. So see, any system has a capex value to it, and there is an opex also to it in terms of AMCs and in terms of servers and all that. So what we try to do is that we try to do a cost benefit analysis, a very deep dive into that, that if we are going in for a particular system, say IPOS implementation, how much is going to be my capex spend over 1 year? What is my capex over the life of the project? What are the savings in terms of operational savings we are going to bring about in the system, or the value addition to the customer? We try to put a value to it, and then we try to evaluate the project, and that's how it's given a go green signal. So while I know I've not been able to answer your question because we can't put it across on a public forum, but I can that's how we actually evaluate. And it's a tough call, because justifying everything IT purely saying that this is required is very difficult, because the management expects that any system needs to bring about some savings or needs to create value for the customer. So that becomes a challenge.
Sure. What is your future wish list for next 2 to 3 years with respect to further integration or advancements in technology?
See, basically, as and when the 5G era comes in, the speed of transactions will drastically improve. Now we are also sort of integrating the payment portals into our operating systems. So we've already done it in one of our ports in Mundra. So there we have now a platform where even a customer can, before picking up his container, he can make the payment also online. So it's just like on your phone, you got an app. You can pay it through your bank or through your credit card. The payment gets credited to us. we release the DO on the, through the system, he gets it. So that's our wish list, that, for all commodities, all ports, that's where we need to be. And it has to be very, very fast and reliable, because see, some of the customers are sitting in remote areas where the net connectivity is a challenge. So, expecting that customer to be that net, to be able to use that feature efficiently is also not correct right now. But going forward, that is where it's going to be, that already we are paperless. Second is going to be more and more, all it's going to be app-based, cloud-based transactions which are happening, and minimization of even the face-to-face interactions what we are having with CHAs, with other customers at the port premises, if I can say.
Sure. One more question before I move to Mr. Chaturvedi. What have been the, if you could give us some indication in terms of what has been the cost savings, the time savings with respect to various solutions, various softwares, where technologies that have been put in place?
See, in terms of savings have also have come around because of digitalization of the documentations. See, now we don't have people sitting at the gate who will receive the documents from the trailer drivers or from CHAs, will verify, will give it back. So all that process has resulted in us in terms of man-hour saving as well as in terms of cost. Secondly, in terms of like what I was mentioning, the digital transactions. So my how do I say, the cost for working, my capital comes down because my debtors outstandings have come down, because people can now pay online, they are happy with the digital invoice and the digital DO. Otherwise it was like a physical invoice reaching them, then they will send it by check, or they will do a bank transaction. So everything was taking time. So one of the wish lists is that in future we will sort of integrate our operating system with the SAP also, so that the invoices are also being sent directly. As of now, that's a separate system which is talking to this system, and then there is some delay in that. But yes, that our working capital management also has been sort of a huge saving for us.
Sure. Mr. Chaturvedi, coming to you, what is the kind of IT spend that you look forward to in next 1 or 2 years?
So again, the numbers, the
percentage or number, whatever is you're comfortable with.
No, the approach is the same. I think everyone has the same approach, whether we have ROI out of our investment. But as a lead new initiative, I am bridging the gap between the business and IT needs. Essentially, it is not only ROI, it is also how to reduce cost of implementation, because technology is a kind of wild animal which is very difficult to tame. And so it's my responsibility. Having said that, we are focusing mostly on efficiency improvement at this point in time, and efficiency improvement in terms of cost improvement, and also responses to our customer, response time to our customers. Our priority maybe next 1 year is going to be value chain integration. That is from vessel side to the evacuation or in the reverse direction.
Sure. Also, with respect to in next couple of years, what are the kind of solutions, upgradations, advancements that you're looking for at Essar Ports?
So as I said, we are going to implement. It's going to be ecosystem approach, and what they have in PCS, we are going to have for Essar also. I think next 4 to 5 months you will see a kind of PCS coming from Essar, and we will be incorporating all the activities in value chain, and we'll be onboarding customers. And that is what our goal is next 4 to 5 months, not 1 year. In fact, we are already ahead, and we are going to implement these solutions ASAP.
Sure. Coming to you, Mr. Sirkar, where, with respect to the technologies and the advancements and the digitization that has been put up at JNPT, what are the kind of benefits, whether in terms of reducing congestion or ensuring transparency, or whether it's reducing the dwell time? If you could throw some light on these areas.
By way of deploying various digital solutions for port automation as part of port automation. As I told you, one is the benefit that we have derived out of it is that the gate congestion, that was one of the biggest problems that the port was facing. And that has been eliminated by way of automating the entire process with RFID-based gate automation. That is one area we have addressed. Second is that in terms of providing transparency to the various stakeholders, in terms of especially for the billing part of it. So now what we have done is that entire thing is with this GST and other thing coming in, we have a third-party billing solution where we extract the data from the terminal operating system of all the activities or the services that we have rendered. And based on the scale of rates, we derive those invoices and pass it on to SAP, through which that it talks to the GST portal and get those IRN stamping and QR code, things like that. After that, what we do is that we have got a separate portal for the stakeholders, and we upload all those details, the bills that have been generated, the payment. So he is very clear about it because in our port, we have got automated the entire process. They have got to have a deposit account. So if it, depending upon the business that they are doing with JNPT, they got to maintain a balance, a minimum balance. So if it comes below the threshold limit, then automatically the system will not allow them to transact any business in the port. That means the gate operation, everything, will not be able to take the container in or out of the thing. So that was one of the biggest challenges because we were not able to pass it on in time. Sometimes it used to happen during late hours, and next day morning he has to ship some container. So if his balance comes down, the entire system will not allow it. So this kind of transparency as part of the entire portal community we have provided. So they are also well aware of that what all kind of bills are going to be generated, though they replenish that particular balance so that this kind of inconvenience they do not face. Plus, as part of the SAP, we have just recently decided to upgrade our existing SAP on ECC to S4HANA on HEC. We have gone with SAP directly with them, and we are in process of migrating the entire SAP to S4HANA on a cloud platform. And in addition to that, we'll be integrating what Mr. Sudhir talked about is in terms of EBS, Enterprise Business Solution, for all 6 ports that has been considered, which is also in the process of implementation for S4HANA. We plan to integrate with them as part of the APIs or web services that will be provided to us, so that at the central level from the ministry's perspective or from the IPS perspective, all this information will get reflected in a single dashboard that they'll be developing. So these are the various things. Plus another thing that we are in the process of implementing is, we talked about a terminal operating system for the containers. We have for the bulk separate operating system. And now we are considering for the marine operating system. Basically, one of the biggest areas that in the JNPT was the entire marine operations was more or less manual. Not much of IT intervention was there in that. So as part of that, we are evaluating few options that are available in the market. We plan to deploy marine operating system as well. And finally, when we talk of this or the various types of operating system, integrating them, because until and unless you integrate them, because they need to work in sync. So we are planning to integrate all this operating system into one single dashboard so that it gives a complete picture to the top management of entire port operation functionalities, the key performance indicators, so as to take a decision in respect of enhancing the efficiencies of the port.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Kumar, coming to you. You have talked about, the POS, which the tenders are going to come out in 2 months. Beyond that, are there...
It is already on, madam.
Okay.
The POS tender, the last date for submission, we are extending to 1st March. Okay.
Sure.
That
sure.
one thing.
Sure.
Yes, madam.
Besides POS, where are the current gaps, and are there any new solutions that the Port Trust is going to explore in near future? You were talking about maybe the next phase would be IoT and AI. So if you could a bit elaborate on those.
Yes, madam. Actually, as part of Maritime India Vision 2030, Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways, they have identified certain processes which are to be compulsorily through digital mode. This IoT adoption in the areas like we have so many bridges, roads, culverts. These areas, they require some maintenance at certain point of time. So the timely maintenance of these things, currently it is completely left to the civil engineering department or mechanical engineering department. Through manual means they are assessing the condition of the structures or the facilities, and they are taking the maintenance. Now we want to go with IoT and condition monitoring based systems, so that the maintenance can be preventive maintenance instead of reactive maintenance. That is one area which we are concentrating. Once we implement this POS on this type of IoT based implementation for different structures and facilities through condition monitoring. That is one area which we want to go for. This we want to go for virtual reality based systems, where the pilots can now the pilots there is a draft and dredge depth. Okay, two things are there. There is a 1 meter difference between the draft and the dredge depth. Okay. Now this we want to reduce to less than 30 centimeters through virtual reality, through which we can bring larger vessels instead of going for more dredging. This is one area which we will concentrate maybe in the next year, not this financial year.
Sure, Mr. Kumar.
Very lean team.
Thank you. With respect to data security.
Pardon, madam?
Yeah, Mr. Kumar, with respect to data security, what steps are being taken and how do you ensure that?
Data, we are following this cyber guidelines issued by this Mighty and other organizations. That is one thing. We are reformulating our security policies. That is also in this financial year we will be doing. With that, we will find the gaps, and probably we will fill the gaps by taking certain measures.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Sirkar, coming to you, are you also following similar guidelines for data security? So you're muted.
Yeah, the guidelines remains the same for all government setups. In fact, we have devised our own IT security policy also, which has been approved. And some initiatives as part of the cyber security, what we have taken, I think, first in the Indian ports, is that we have our own SOC, which is there in Trivandrum. We have got 2 data centers out here. And the loggers, the data that comes in from all the critical servers are sent into the logger and finally being monitored at the SOC at Trivandrum. So in respect to that, we have been able to plug a lot of loopholes which earlier we were not able to identify. And there is a constant monitor of 24/7 of all the network traffic that is moving across our LAN. So that has helped us in identifying the loopholes, and accordingly, depending upon the recommendations that we get, we are deploying the solutions that is there. Plus, as I said, we already have firewall in place. WAF is also in the process of deployment, plus endpoint security in terms of DLP, in terms of intrusion, IPS, IPL. So all this solution, antivirus obviously is there. These are already in place. But they are, this is about 3 years old. So we, depending on the new attacks that are coming in, so we need to upgrade ourselves. That is, the process is on. Hopefully in next 3 months time, we'll be able to upgrade the entire cybersecurity framework.
Sure. Mr. Sirkar, one more question to you. Whenever we talk about automation and digitization, there's always a bit of resistance to change. And the mindset, that could possibly lead to a job loss, or how do you deal with that at the port?
See, that's a very good question, especially this is very applicable in respect of the government ports because they are resistant to change for any IT initiatives that has been taken. But frankly speaking, initially this problem we used to face, but since we have matured over a period of time, compared to other major ports, there are a lot of IT solution being deployed in JNPT. So that mindset is presently not there in the sense. But of course, in terms of the process change, that is one of the biggest challenge that we face is that during the implementation of SAP also, or any other IT solution that we go to deploy, we normally tend to deploy as per the industry standard practice. With a few exception, of course, if it certain things which are statutory in nature because government have got certain statutory things, so those needs to be customized as per the solution. Other than that, we always try to adopt to the international industry standard that has been prescribed, because what we feel is that if you tweak with the system which is there, it land up into getting a crippled system, and the entire efficiency and the benefit that you derive out of it is lost. So there is some amount of, we are just trying to balance it out in between. So that is what our approach has been. But recently, we have been getting very positive from the user community as well. So not much of difficulty, so to say.
Sure. Mr. Chaturvedi, coming to you, what are the risks associated with cybersecurity, and how are you dealing with this whole, given the recent cyber attacks also on the shipping lines and the very, very importance of data protection?
So, we take data protection or data security very seriously, and most of the data is stored and saved in our private network. So we don't expose it to third parties unless it's absolutely necessary. And also the architecture is such that, only the information which is needed by outside parties are available on the cloud. The rest everything is in our own data center, which is in Bombay.
Sure.
And we have a dedicated team for data security, which is looking after data security for the entire group.
Sure. Do you also see additional value being derived from integrating ERP with other systems, whether it's VTMS or Waybridge, etc.? How does the integration is it a big challenge?
I spoke about, the integration of entire value chain. And value chain is not only, a logistics chain or supply chain. Value chain, if you're talking about core business, then we need to understand what is happening on financial front, what is happening on operational front, how these metrics are tying up with each other. And you need to bring in some smartness. So of course, it cannot be a, kind of reactive reporting system. There has to be some smartness in terms of recommendation, in terms of alerts, in terms of prevention. So of course, ERP system is going to be integrated, and that is a way forward. So everything has to be integrated. I think other speakers also spoke on the same lines that they are moving towards integration of marine operation. Then you have, this berth operation. Then you have yard operation. Then evacuation. Then interacting with customers. So everything has to come on one system. So it is, when I said port as a platform, that means that we are creating an operating system for not only port, but everything linked to the port.
What's your view on use of drones?
I think it is good from two perspectives. One is, of course, it depends on port to port. One is, drones are not only used for surveillance, they're also used for creating, say, digital twins. So I think people would have, they have known it that digital twins are essentially a model which is not only stop, but also flow. So they showcase your port in action without doing anything at the real port. So drones are very important for real-time information feeding into your digital twin. Surveillance is, of course, everybody knows, but another application is digital twin. So I think drones are going to be a key element in port operation as well.
Mr. Sirkar, are we using or planning to use drones for any of the major ports? Either you or Mr. Kumar could answer.
In terms of deploying drones, as of now, to be very honest,
it's still far-fetched, right?
It's still far-fetched, but I happen to have an experience of using drones in Antwerp port. So a lot of things they have been using through drones. One of the applications they have deployed is what they call as IDOS. Is basically monitoring their pollution depending upon the thermal parameters that they capture through drone. And then they give the alerts to the various stakeholders in Antwerp port. And that was a very good application, so to say. And that is one thing that I had shared with my management. I hope sooner or later we'll go for it as well.
Sure. Mr. Khurana, my last set of questions is for you. Your views on how do you manage cybersecurity?
So we have a separate full-fledged team which is dedicated to cybersecurity, because for us it's very important. I mean, for all port operators, because we get in files which are coming in from the shipping lines also. So how to firewall our system from incoming and outgoing accesses which we have given to the system is a challenge. I mean, during COVID also we have read that there were a couple of shipping lines who became a victim of the cyber attack. So because of which the whole thing collapses. So cybersecurity is of prime importance. We've got our own dedicated team. We have our own dedicated servers at a secure location. And that's where what I was talking to you earlier about, that that it's easier said that the two systems should be talking to each other. The integration part. Cybersecurity is one of the major sort of challenges which we need to overcome. We don't expose our systems to any external, magnified virus. So that's a challenge, but yes, we are geared up to face that.
What about use of drones? Would they be allowed as a part of IoT? Can they be used at ports? What is the view for Adani ports?
Yeah, so see, we are pretty keen on that, but beyond surveillance and safety, as of now, we have not been able to utilize them gainfully in any other processes. See, unless that happens, then the earlier cost-benefit equation, what I was talking about, that doesn't come into play. Because it's a good to have thing, but then it has to, sort of substitute certain existing processes and resources of mine. It cannot be that we continue the way we are working, plus you add on drones for a feel-good factor. So that's the sort of a trade-off which we are also evaluating right now. Like even if I take the case of security, you can have a totally drone surveilled terminal area, but can you dispense away with the physical security? We've not reached that stage as yet. So then it becomes what? It becomes that you will have physical security, you will have gate security, plus you will have drones. So that's where I'm saying that, okay, for security, it's easier to understand, but even in case of processes, unless you've got an OCR completely in the yard, then the drones can also optically record the container numbers, all the stack numbers. It's, I think, I mean, it's going to happen, but I think it still takes some time for the industry to mature enough to adapt them fully.
Mr. Khurana, with respect to capital intensive equipment, whether we're talking about movers, prime movers, or cranes, are there any technologies that you use for making sure that management and maintenance is, up to date or being done accurately?
See, as far as all the cranes and the costly equipment are concerned, they are already having their own processes which are given by the OEM suppliers, and everything goes as per the system. It's a planned maintenance, number of hours, number of utilizations, number of downtime. So everything is recorded. Going forward, the next level is going to be how do you automate that? That's where I think the next wave of technological growth or the impetus is going to come. Today you got a crane. Can you have a totally automated crane? I mean, on the ship side, on the yard side, people have started, the delivery cranes and all, which are being automatically run or being run by bots. But the challenge still remains on the ship side, because that's very dynamic, because every ship is different, the storage is different. So you require human intervention. So probably the next level of technological growth would focus on automation of these heavy cranes.
Sure. I'll request for one last final comment from each of the panelists. Mr. Kumar, we could begin with you. Any final comments from your end, sir? Okay, Mr. Sirkar, we move on to you.
Yep. Basically, I've been in the sport sector for a significant amount of time, especially in the government setup. So, two of the things that, of course, things are changing a bit, especially with this new smart port initiative under the Maritime Vision 2030 that has been taken up by the government in terms of various policies. Things are starting, we are able to see a better side of this earlier, which we were not able to envisage. So certain things that I feel that in terms of the technology transformation that needs to take place in the port sector is that you need to bring in a lot of professional manpower, to be so to say, with those IT background. That is one of the, because until and unless you have those professional manpowers, it becomes very difficult and challenging to implement and deploy solution. Second is in terms of the business process flow. All ports have their own process flow, which becomes very difficult now that this, what Mr. Sudhi talked about is EBS implementation, which is presently on. So here you have separate instances of S4 HANA being deployed for all ports. The reason behind it is that there is not that level of standardization within the port itself. So if those things are standardized in terms of the message, in terms of the business process flow, in terms of the manpower deployment, so adoption becomes much easier. And we need to focus more on the IT cybersecurity part of it, which I feel is lacking, because now that everything is going, automation is coming in, digital transformation taking place, the entire thing relies on your data center that you are having. So protecting the entire data center framework becomes one of the biggest challenge for all of us, and we should all strive. And I would request IPA also to take an initiative similar to the Indian Railways, to have an apex body to drive in those policies across all major ports, so that the uniformity and standardization can be achieved across ports.
Thank you, Mr. Sirkar. Mr. Chaturvedi, one final comment. 30-40 seconds to you, please.
Yeah, I think the piece of advice from my side, you don't look at big things, go for low-hanging fruit, go by the Pareto principle, that is 20% of things are going to contribute to 80% of the outcomes. Third is educate the top management about technology. It should not be a wish list. They should be understanding, feeling, breathing the technology. And fourth and last is go for agile approach.
Sure, Mr. Khurana.
So what I personally think that we are headed for exciting times as far as digitalization and automation in the port sector is concerned. Another very important field which is actually gaining importance, and I've also seen it grow in our company in Adani Ports in the last 3 years. We build a very strong team of data analytics. See, any terminal, any port is a minefield of data. You can gather so much of data, but unless you've got a dedicated team studying that data, trying to do some pattern, trying to figure out the patterns out of it and come out with some value added suggestions, all that data will get lost. I mean, it'll be of no use. So I think the data analytics in the port sector is also going to be one of the key trends to watch for.